Good afternoon and welcome to the Center for Education Reform's School Choice Lunchtime Lesson. It's National School Choice Week, and I wanted to thank you for bringing your lunch and joining me for this conversation about blended learning. I'll make a couple of brief remarks and then I'll be taking your questions, and I look forward to your comments. You may submit them at any time during the webinar at lunchlessons@edreform.com, or you can go to the Center for Education Reform's Facebook page or Twitter page, or you can use the hashtag #ChoiceLunch. I'm Tom Vander. I'm the CEO of Open Education Solutions, a blended learning service provider. I also blog for GettingSmart.com. GettingSmart.com is a digital learning advocacy firm. I'm also the author of a new book called Getting Smart: How Digital Learning is Changing the World. I'd like to start this morning just by talking about why I'm so enthusiastic about the shift to personal digital learning. In my book, Getting Smart, I describe three primary factors that are the benefits that we'll begin to see widely during this decade. The first one is customization. That means really fulfilling the promise of personalized and differentiated learning, helping every student learn at the right level, at the right pace, and increasingly on the right path, using the right modality, tapping into the best way for them to learn. And my sense is that customization is going to improve learning productivity. That means we'll see more kids learn more per hour. John Danner at Rocket Ship, a high-performing blended elementary network in California, suggests that when he compares adaptive learning in his learning lab, where kids are learning at their right learning level, to the wrong lesson provided in perhaps the wrong way to a full classroom of kids, he can see like a 10x difference in learning productivity. And I do think we'll see with targeted learning for at least a portion of the day that we're going to be able to do a much better job around skill building, particularly in mathematics, and I hope shortly thereafter vocabulary building and reading and even writing. The second big benefit noted in Getting Smart is motivation. I think we have a lot to learn from casual game developers who are very good at engaging, at setting the hook with engaging content and powerful themes. And then second, keeping our interest, building persistence by calibrating the difficulty. By calibrating, I mean they make the challenges just hard enough. They're not so hard that they frustrate, and then they're not so easy that they make you bored. They're calibrated right around your, what we used to call the proximal zone of development, right at your learning level. And I think the ability to engage with enticing content and beautiful themes, and to have a smart learner profile that really understands what causes each of us to persist, that we'll see students engage more hours per day, more days per year. So I think motivation can extend time, and customization can build the productivity of learning. The third factor that I talk about in Getting Smart is equalization, and that's really lifting the floor. It's narrowing the digital divide. It's connecting every student and every family in America with a free access device provided from a public school or school provider, and also making sure that they have an internet connection at home. And when we do that, we'll make sure that every student in America has access to the best content and the best teachers. I think it's interesting that really redefines the whole subject of choice. So that brings me to the subject of this week, Choice Week in America. You know, for 15 years, we've been having this debate about traditional school districts and charter schools. And what's been so interesting about 2011 is that online learning has been building for 15 years. And in 2011, the concept of blended learning really exploded. The idea of combining online learning with on-site learning and creating new models that are the best of both. The combination of more access to online learning and more blended options is really redefining the whole choice debate in America. It's no longer just a traditional school versus a charter school. It's options within each school day for each student, an alternative pathway in a blended school, or the ability to blend their own learning by choosing from a variety of online providers. It's, in a sense, the beginning of the shift from education as a place to learning as a service, a customized service that's a little bit different for every single student. And that really, I think, completely redefines the choice landscape. And so really from here on out, I think our conversations about what educational options mean and how they work and how we provide them to every student and every family are really quite different and quite interesting. Let me spend a couple minutes on blended learning. That's how most students will experience online learning. There's really two primary models of blended learning. The first one's called a rotation model, and that's really where students rotate through an online experience and then go back to an on-site experience. I mentioned rocket ship. That's the most famous elementary blended model, and students spend about 2 hours out of their 8-hour day in a learning lab, a supervised learning lab, and they spend a lot of time on an adaptive math product. That could be Dreambox, or it could be a game-based product like ST Math from Mind Research Institute. But each of their experiences is really tailored to their own learning level. At the high school level, Carpe Diem in Yuma, Arizona is an interesting example of a rotational model. And it's about a 50-50 mix. Students spend half their time learning online. They happen to use a product called E2020. And then they spend the other half of their time in workshops designed by master teachers. So for the almost 300 students, 612, there are 6 teachers, a master math teacher, science, English, and social studies teacher. And they teach these wonderful workshops that combine a kind of a Socratic seminar with small group instruction. And so the Carpe Diem blend is really an interesting mixture of personalized online learning with workshops. Now, rotational models typically continue to rely on cohort progress. In other words, kids are typically moving ahead together in an age cohort. Because a portion of the day is individualized, it does give rotation schools the more ability to more precisely manage progress than a traditional school might. Now let's flip over to a flex model. A flex model delivers most of the core curriculum online. An example would be Advanced Path Academics. I'm on the board of this Dropout Recovery Network. They have academies around the country, and it's really great for students that are a year or two behind and really need a chance to be able to be in a structured, supportive environment, but to move at an accelerated pace. K-12 has begun opening some of these flex schools, Flex San Francisco and Flex Silicon Valley. So these are online schools, but with on-site support, where kids have the benefit of some one-to-one support, some small group instruction. But these schools really rely on individual progress. Now there are combinations that InnoSight Institute in their seminal report called The Rise of Blended Learning, they called SelfBlend. This means in states that allow students to choose on a part-time basis from a variety of online providers, students can blend their own learning. And there's probably 1.5 million, maybe close to 2 million students this year that will blend their own learning by taking some of their courses online and some of their courses at a local school. As more and more states provide multiple providers and access to choice to the course level, we'll continue to see this expand really exponentially. Let me conclude with just a couple comments about the new policy environment. Governors Jeb Bush and Bob Weiss got together in 2010 and developed an initiative called Digital Learning Now. It's a framework developed for state policymakers. It was developed in about 100 days with about 100 experts at the end of 2010. And they laid out the 10 benefits of education, the 10 elements of a recommended state policy framework. It's available at digitallearningnow.com. And it suggests access to digital learning for all students. That's blended learning and online learning in a full and part-time basis, regardless of what the student did the prior year. So no barriers, no artificial caps to enrollment or to the size of charter schools. It also recommends high quality digital content that states make the shift from print to digital and provide every student with an access device. It recommends that teachers receive the training they need to be successful in a digital learning environment. It recommends that funding be weighted, that means reflective of the challenge. Portable, that it means it follows the student to the best option. And fractional, so weighted and portable funding. That's going to be probably the most difficult thing for states to get done. And then finally, as I said, every student should have an access device, and then districts and states are going to have to work hard together with cities and broadband providers to make sure that every family in America has good access to broadband. So that's the Digital Learning Now policy framework. I look forward to your comments. I hope we can talk about the power and promise of digital learning, about how it's beginning to be adopted by schools in different blends, and or what the new policy environment might look like. So it looks like we have some questions here. Michelle from Washington, D.C. Says, when you talk to parents, is there a strong desire for the use of technology in classrooms? Do you think that stems from greater home use for early learning? It's an interesting question, Michelle. I think parents are a bit of a mixed bag when it comes to technology. I think the one thing every parent agrees on is they want a great teacher for their child, and so I think that reinforces when we talk about digital learning, whether it's online or blended, it's really important to have a great teacher. There are some exciting ways that blended learning can allow teachers to work together in teams, and that the master teachers really can now be leveraged and can benefit hundreds or even thousands of students. So I think we can help fulfill the promise of great teachers for every student. I do think a lot of savvy parents are finding terrific resources online at home, often for free, like Khan Academy. And as a result, I do think it's increasing the interest in technology at school. Maybe last week you saw a report that came out from the Cooney Center, the Sesame Street folks. They wrote a terrific review of all the Apple apps for education. It turns out about half of those are for preschool. And so Michelle, your question about do you think it stems from greater use for early learning? Absolutely. We're seeing preschool kids are growing up on iPhones and iPads and now Android tabs and are coming to school with even more and more exposure to learning apps. Let's jump to Tim on Long Island. He's a little uncomfortable with online learning for young kids, but sees great value in high school. Yeah, great comment. So let's think about learning as a continuum from pre to college. And Tim, it sounds like you and I would both be comfortable with at the post-secondary environment, allowing young people to make their own choices about courses or degree programs, and we'd both be uncomfortable with young children being unsupervised. I completely agree with that. I do unfortunately think that learning technology is going to amplify parenting. In other words, great parents are going to make sure that a high percentage of student time online is very productive, and students that are less well supported are going to continue to spend 6 hours a day on a screen in low value activities. So yes, I think young kids clearly should be supervised. And in terms of online learning, if you look at the sites of K-12 and Connections, the largest online providers, you would see that elementary online learning, up until about 5th grade, the website actually addresses the parent or the learning coach as the primary um, provider. And so all the national providers do assume that for young kids, there has to be a learning coach at home that's intimately involved in making sure that kids understand what's expected, that following through, that kids are spending a lot of time with print materials as well. So Tim, yes, it has to be a really well supervised, really well supported experience for young kids to be successful online. Thanks. That's a great question. Matt from Milwaukee asked a question about the role of teachers in blended environments. That's a great question. So the answer is it depends. It'll be quite different school to school, and as a result, I think more and more training is going to have to be model dependent, because it will be quite different to teach in a Carpe Diem than it will in a K-12 Flex, for example. But blended environments are going to allow for differentiated and distributed staffing models. Differentiated means different levels that master teachers will be able to affect the work of hundreds of students and will be able to help mentor younger faculty. It means that teachers will be able to increasingly work on a team that takes responsibility for a group of students. It means that there'll be a bit more clarity around sort of levels of progression as they move up as a professional. It means that teachers that want to earn more will have the ability to earn more by working a longer contract or by taking on additional responsibilities. So I think it's exciting for teachers. It's also going to open up distributed opportunities. That means working remotely. A little startup in San Francisco called Presence Learning really pioneered online speech therapy. That it looks like it works really well, and it allows teachers to work when they want, where they want. It's available on demand for districts. It works. It's less expensive, and it looks like it works well for kids. So it's going to create lots of new options for teachers, and I think that's really quite exciting. And I think some of the associations are beginning to enter this conversation. And I think this question about the new role of teacher and new options for teachers is going to make this conversation very dynamic for the balance of the decade. We have a question about, do colleges recognize high school diplomas from students who received their diploma via blended learning? Yes. Blended learning is typically and most widely offered right now through school districts, so there's no difference in a diploma, and all the virtual schools where it's 100% online are also chartered by a state, so there's no difference in their diplomas. And the military, which oddly is a leader in online learning, had until recently some prohibitions on online diplomas, but that has been taken care of. The NCAA, which was trying to guard against some diploma mills for basketball players, has some controls in place to make sure that they're only accepting valid diplomas. But yeah, absolutely, the online and blended diplomas are like every other diploma. Judy from Pleasanton, can you talk about the issues of inequality in broadband? Yeah, that's a terrific question and a big problem, Judy. Thanks for that. We are seeing states like Wyoming make a big push to end the inequality of broadband in rural areas and to make it more affordable in urban areas. I'm happy to see Comcast working with a number of states and districts to make it really affordable in urban areas. And in rural areas, Judy, the state and the provider are really going to have to work together to make a difference there. I will say, in the meantime, while we're sorting that problem out over the next few years, there's a lot that we can do. We can send a playlist of activities home, cached on a tablet or a laptop, so that even during a bus ride or at home, if a student doesn't have access, we're going to be able to extend their learning. But we do, as you point out, need to keep the fight up to extend access for every family. Another question: some parents are concerned about too much access to the internet and gaming when their students use online or blended learning. Is that a valid concern? Sure. As I said before, it really needs to be supervised. I think more than ever, parents, particularly of young students, really need to make sure that they limit the amount of time on a screen and that they manage the amount of time on a screen so that you know what your kid's doing, that they're in productive and safe activities. So absolutely, it's important to manage that time and get them outside. Make sure that their lives are blended experiences, that it includes a lot of physical activity, that it includes reading, that it includes play, and that their online time is sensible. Thanks for that comment. Todd in Grand Rapids asked about the announcement of the Apple e-textbook. Could cloud or support blended learning efforts? Great question. Probably too early to tell. If you check out gettingsmart.com this morning, we released a smart tech roundup, and the first paragraph deals with this, Todd. It highlights that in Fast Company, I commented that I thought the announcement was a bit of a yawner. I think we're headed towards a post-textbook world where teachers are beginning to mash up content, use social platforms like Edmodo to really customize the learning experience. Teachers are also using adaptive content, adaptive sequences like Dreambox and a game like MangaHigh.com, a cool math game. And the whole notion of textbooks is a bit dated. I'm also a bit concerned that Apple's iBook Author just works on iPad. So you at the end of an authoring a little textbook, you find out it's only available through Apple and through iPad. And so I would much prefer to see people authoring for multiple devices. I think most schools are going to move to a BYOD environment where kids can bring multiple devices, and we're going to have to see people authoring to multiple screens and multiple browsers. And so I really don't think, I think iBook Author is an interesting development. It will accelerate the shift to personal digital learning, but I really don't see it as transformative at all. On Wednesday on gettingsmart.com, I'll have a blog about a different approach. It will compare and contrast tablets versus laptops and web devices like the Google Chromebook. So take a look at our site on Thursday for that. I think a timely discussion. How can teachers start the shift to blended learning? There's great advice on gettingsmart.com. We had We had a great article where a teacher talked about the small steps that you can take. I think it was published Wednesday, and then we relinked to it on Saturday on our staff favorites. Um, so you can start small with a flipped classroom by assigning little video snippets that you produce, or you could use Khan Academy, and you can start assigning digital content at home for kids that have access. That's one great way to start. Another way a school can start is just by offering online AP, online foreign language, so extending the options that are available for kids. So Barbara asked about what do we know about the results from blended learning? So let me back up and say that the military and corporate training environments have been blended for more than a decade. They're already very sophisticated um, at using the right combination of learning environments for the right job. The military has really um, um, mastered the sort of rapid pathway to mastery of getting smart about what students need to know and be able to do, and then back mapping, and then combining the right sequence of experience. So my point is, there's tons of great results post-secondary. Um, the results in K-12 are relatively new, but Carpe Diem, has the highest performing elementaries in California, that all low-income kids, most English speakers, and they're often doing better than the kids next door in Palo Alto. At Carpe Diem, it's one of the top math schools in Arizona, and so those models give all of us a lot of hope that blended environments really can extend and customize learning, and as a result help more kids leave school better prepared for college and work. Gary in Michigan says, beyond K-12 and Connections, who are the best providers of online content and instruction? Yeah, that's a great question, Gary. There's lots to choose from. Um, let's say in one category, we have online course providers. So APACS would be a widely used, well-regarded provider of online courses, and many high schools around the country use APEX for either credit recovery or for offering more AP. We also have the historical content providers. Um, you can list Plato, Compass Learning, and they really have now a comprehensive, often K-12 offering of really good digital content with embedded assessment and a good management system. Pearson has a few offerings in that category as well. And then we're beginning to see lots of open content providers, OER, Open Education Resources. CK12.org has great high school textbooks. Hippocampus.org has great math and science online for free. Curriki, OER Commons are all really good free providers. So there's a ton to choose from. And that's, I think, what's really exciting, just a lot of new choices. Connie says that a lot of kids today have poor communication skills. How can e-learning help develop excellent communication skills? Great question, Connie. Let's make it a priority in our schools. I guess, Connie, the thing that I'm most excited about is, in a lot of secondary writing classes today, because teachers have such big loads, it's not unusual for them to only assign like 3 or 4 written assignments per semester, because they may have 150 or 200 pages to grade. What I'm excited about is new tools for teachers and kids that will automatically score their writing. In fact, last week I helped Hewlett launch ASAP, the Automated Student Assessment Prize, to demonstrate and accelerate advances in automated scoring. And what you're going to see soon is that that all kids are going to have access to automated scoring for their writing. And in fact, it'll sit in their word processor just like the grammar check does today. And I think with those kinds of tools, teachers will be able to assign 1,500 words per week, not 1,500 words per semester. So I'm quite optimistic about these new tools for our English and humanities teachers that are going to encourage students to do a lot more writing. You know, another exciting portfolio company from my venture fund, Learn Capital, is called StudySync. StudySync, it's SYNC, StudySync.com. That models the sort of discourse that we ought to see in our humanities classes. And so I think we can use modern media to show the sort of old-fashioned Socratic dialogue and how students ought to be engaging with a text. So I think there's some new ways that we can use e-learning to teach some old skills. But thanks for that great question. Cynthia says, what are your feelings on the flipped classroom model in Clintondale High School in Detroit? I don't know that one well enough to comment specifically on it, but I'm very optimistic about the notion of flipped classroom, which means sort of pushing a lot of the introduction of new concepts to outside the classroom hour, and then using classroom time for teachers to do homework, to work interactively with students on problem solving. So I love that idea as a way to sort of double the amount of productive time that kids are spending, particularly in mathematics. So I'm quite optimistic about that model, and I'll learn more about Clintonville. Thanks. From Twitter, we have a question about how do we combat political lethargy and ignorance on this issue. Yeah, it's a great question, and there really has been a smear campaign, particularly by the New York Times, that's really published very irresponsible hit pieces. These aren't investigative journalism. They're pieces that are designed to really damage people and institutions, and I think it's really it's unfortunate. Investigative journalism is important in this sort of dynamic space, but let's make sure that journalism is really is trying to create context, trying to create understanding, and not just trying to sell newspapers. So we need an open debate about what works and why it doesn't work. We also need more data. One thing I'm excited about, the shift to personal digital learning, is that we're going to have kids producing 10,000 keystrokes a day. We're going to have these big data files that are going to help us learn a lot more about students. And I think it will allow us to have a much more informed discussion about online and blended learning and what works for what students and why not. Right now, we see a lot of inaccurate stories. I'll give you an example. The Colorado stories about online learning, they criticize the schools because kids would drop in, try a course, and then drop out, and the school would keep the money. Well, why is that? It's because Colorado funds on a first day count, not on an average daily attendance. So this is really a self-inflicted problem by state policies that haven't been updated for digital learning. So let's update our policies, use digital learning now as an example. Let's continue to have an adult conversation about what works and what doesn't for what kids. And maybe that will help combat the political lethargy. The other thing that I would say is we're going to have a decade of deficits. That's what Marguerite Rosa said at a conference last week, and that means that there's going to be real cost pressures. So I do think this new normal period, as Arnie Duncan put it, is going to force us to look for creative and useful ways to combine online and on-site learning to both save money and improve results. Brian from Minneapolis, when looking at technology-assisted instruction and blended learning, can you speak to the notion of portable devices and BYOD? I'm optimistic about BYOD. If you go to gettingsmart.com and search for BYOD. You'll find a series of articles by me and other authors and teachers that advocate for the ability for students to bring their own device to school. Karen, Ed Tech Director at Forsyth County, Georgia, has a great comment on this regard. She says, your district is already BYOD, you just won't admit it. In other words, kids are bringing smart devices to school. We pretend that they don't. It's time for school boards to update their acceptable use policy, realize that smart devices are coming to school, and to have curriculum and tech directors in districts realize that they're going to have to adopt a couple browsers, sort of optimized for several browsers, and prepare for a BYOD environment. It's really, it's going to help us shift from 3 students per device to 3 devices per student over the next few years. And I see a couple years from now, most kids are going to spend time during a week on 3 different screens, on a small screen, on a tab or a laptop screen, and then occasionally in a lab when they're really producing media on a big screen. So I think that's the sort of environment that we should be shooting for a couple years from now. Roger lives in the Appalachian region of Kentucky, a state that I've been to a handful of times. Roger, I started my career in Hazard and Pineville and Paintville as a coal miner, so I know the terrain. He said, what kind of hardware and software would you recommend as a startup where there's a vacuum in this field? Yeah, that's a great question. Roger, the first thing I would do would be to start a conversation with your school district about the big choice that you have to make, whether you're going to use tablets or a laptop netbook or something like a Chromebook. That's a really, I think, pivotal decision. And I think once you weigh the options there, it'd be a good time to check in with the state. And I've spent some time with your chief, Terry Holliday, a great man. And Terry and his board just adopted a plan that I helped to author, a Digital Learning 2020 plan. And the state there is going to weigh in on the kinds of devices that districts ought to be thinking about. Why? Because Kentucky, like almost every other state, is going to be implementing online assessment in the next couple of years. So I think the state is going to be a partner in helping to solve the access problem, and they may have something to say about which device makes the most sense. But start that conversation now about what device is best for your district. And if you're unsure, try a small pilot. Try an iPad lab and a Chromebook class, and do a quick compare and contrast in the second semester. Try it over summer school and then make an informed decision. As I said, I'll have a blog on Thursday about 3 districts that have just gone through that sort of trial and made, I think, some smart decisions about their one-to-one environment. Another question, what kind of grassroots activity is taking hold in this space? Do you see best practices evolving from parent activists? Yeah, that's a great question. Couple different ways to answer that. First of all, we're seeing a group of parents advocating for online learning in every state. Rose Fernandez, who helped win the right for more online options in Minnesota, has been helping to lead a national network of parent groups in each state. And every year, these parents hold an online learning day at every state capital in the country. And so there clearly are parent groups that are actively engaged in trying to extend and protect um, online learning. Um, I can't say that I've seen parent groups pushing um, blended learning in an organized way, but we certainly see a lot of parent involvement and parent support um, for the adoption of blended learning. The exciting thing about blended learning is it's happening all around us. This isn't really a reform that we're going through. It's a phase change, and because so many parents are helping their kids learn online, so many apps are being used by kids outside of school, that parents are really coming to school very well informed about learning options. So we're being surrounded by learning activities happening in lots of new ways, and that's going to make this decade a super interesting one. So stay tuned on gettingsmart.com for more developments. We always look for great guest content. So if you have a story as a parent or a teacher that you'd like to share with us, you can send it to me at tom@gettingsmart.com, or contact us on our website. Um, this is really a profound change. It's for the first time we have a chance to extend learning opportunities to every student on this planet. Cheap tablets and open content and new blended schools are for the first time going to allow 500 million kids to have access to good high schools around the world. And that's really, I think, the most transformative idea on the planet. And that's why I'm working on it in every possible way that I can. So I'm glad that you are involved or interested in this subject. It's a very exciting time in education. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for being part of School Choice Week and joining us here at the Center for Education Reform. We appreciate it. Have a terrific week. Thanks.